They could no longer see the crimson blood flowing beneath Wang Lin's left eye. The inheritance had, in fact, already begun the moment Wang Lin sat on this chair. Time slowly passed. Wang Lin sat motionless, while the images in his mind continued, flashing one after another. In these images, it was unclear how many years had passed. The cultivators around the stone platform remained silent, with only the faint glow of a distant human lantern burning endlessly, subtly enveloping the surroundings in an illusory haze. One day, a figure dressed in a colorful Taoist robe appeared in the quiet palace, seemingly from nowhere. This figure stood before the middle-aged cultivator, holding an umbrella, silent for a long time. "I have taken in 3 disciples in my life, and you are the greatest of them." The colorful-robed cultivator sighed lightly, walking past the middle-aged scholar and standing in front of Li Guang, who was still holding his bow, frozen in the posture of his former life. "I will fulfill the promise we made. After the Tao of Heaven grows, I will return this bow to your sect." The colorful-robed cultivator took the majestic bow from Li Guang's hand. But in that very instant, his expression suddenly changed. Without hesitation, he took a step forward, moving at an unbelievable speed. His motion was nearing its limit. "Ancient path, no immortal." A voice suddenly echoed in Wang Lin's mind, and at the moment these words appeared, a change occurred that Wang Lin couldn't comprehend. Just these 4 words caused the face of the colorful-robed cultivator to change again. "You're not dead." Surrounded by a 7-colored light, the cultivator retreated and spat blood, disappearing without a trace with a single step. The image in Wang Lin's mind shattered. His body trembled, and the confusion in his eyes faded as he gradually woke up. The borrowed momentum within him surged rapidly, as though trying to escape his body, returning to the chair and dispersing into the heavens and earth. In that instant, a powerful repulsive force suddenly erupted from the chair, as if trying to throw Wang Lin off. It felt as though a will existed within the chair, one that decreed that only the person from that year could sit upon it again. When Wang Lin first sat down, this will had yet to awaken, but as he infused his body with demon and devilish auras, as the images in his mind appeared and collapsed, this will had now stirred. With the awakening of this will, the repulsive force surged forth, not only trying to eject Wang Lin, but also to reclaim the aura that had entered his body. It seemed this will did not allow Wang Lin to possess the aura, as it was forbidden. Wang Lin's face darkened, and with no time to think, his instinct was to keep the borrowed momentum within him, not letting it disperse. This led to a fierce conflict with the chair. Under the immense repulsive force, Wang Lin growled lowly. His face twisted with bulging veins as he fought desperately to keep himself seated, not allowing even the slightest movement. He had a feeling that if he were thrown from the chair, the borrowed momentum would instantly collapse. To keep it, he had to remain seated. Time passed slowly. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. In just 3 breaths, Wang Lin felt as if he had reached his limit. His primordial force circulated rapidly, desperately resisting the increasingly powerful repulsive force, while he crazily absorbed the borrowed momentum. As it awakened, the ancient god star mark on his forehead returned to 6 stars. But as he absorbed faster, the 7th star became faintly visible. Moreover, the ancient demonic power began to swirl within his right eye, showing signs of transforming into a demon star. 4th breath. As Wang Lin resisted for 4 breaths, a thunderous sound exploded in his mind. The 9 maps, which had appeared when the burial platform ascended, all collapsed. As the maps shattered, he saw beneath them an endless region, composed of 6 maps. Under these 6 maps lay heaven and earth. This ancient tomb was not just the current layer, but 3 layers in total. At this moment, everyone entering the tomb was still only on the 1st layer. The entrance to the 2nd layer was directly behind Wang Lin, within the elliptical light cluster atop the chair. Once someone entered the 2nd layer, it would inevitably awaken this powerful presence. At that point, even someone with mystic tone Tao venerable strength would face the unpredictable consequences of life and death. This was merely the 2nd layer, and there was still the 3rd layer. Wang Lin sat on the chair, as though seated within the core of a formation. His divine sense merged with the formation, passing through the 2nd layer and reaching the 3rd. However, The moment his divine sense entered, a roar, repressed for countless millennia, exploded from the third layer, shaking the surroundings. Wang Lin's divine sense shattered instantly in the wake of the roar. Yet, despite the destruction, he still saw a gigantic heart resting in the center of the three maps within the third layer. The heart thumped violently, radiating an unmistakable aura of inheritance. Wang Lin felt certain that if he could just touch the heart with his body, he would obtain the Tao ancient inheritance in its entirety. At this very moment, the aura that had earlier surged into his body from the chair was connected to the heart through a strange method, and it had entered him. Now, as the aura was rapidly drawn out, once it left his body, Wang Lin would have no choice but to break through the second and third layers to obtain the inheritance. Such a feat was unimaginable, not just for him, but for all the cultivators in the ancient tomb. None of them could accomplish this. Countless thoughts flashed through Wang Lin's mind. His eyes grew wild with madness as he made a firm decision. He could not let this borrowed aura dissipate from his body. The fifth breath. A red glow appeared in Wang Lin's eyes, revealing a ferocity, while the seventh star mark of the ancient god at the center of his forehead crazily absorbed the borrowed momentum. Once it enters my body, it belongs to me, Wang Lin. It cannot come and go as it pleases. As Wang Lin regained clarity, the oppressive force transmitted from Lingdong and Zhou Jin also quickly dissipated, giving the two a surge of courage to lift their heads. In that moment of struggle, Zhou Jin was about to raise his head. Without hesitation, Wang Lin's right hand shot up, and with the lingering momentum still within his body, he launched a lightning-fast finger strike that slammed into Zhou Jin's forehead. The moment his finger landed, Zhou Jin spewed blood and was sent flying, a strange symbol emerging on his forehead. It was the ancient slave symbol. You too, on either side, offer your incense power as your full strength and seal this chair. Help me obtain the inheritance. Quickly, Wang Lin spoke rapidly, and as soon as the words left his mouth, he immediately closed his eyes, swiftly sealing himself to prevent the borrowed momentum from dispersing, while firmly anchoring himself to the chair. The sixth breath. Without a second of hesitation, Lingdong stood up and moved to Wang Lin's left side. Her right hand suddenly pressed down on the chair, continuously pouring her incense power into it. At the same time, her left hand lifted, pressing against Wang Lin's body to counteract the chair's rebound force. With a loud boom, Lingdong's hair flew as if blown by an invisible wind, and her clothes were quickly torn apart, as if a great force had been transmitted from Wang Lin's body to her. Her expression changed immediately, but she gritted her teeth and endured. Zhou Jin of the Fengtian Wolf clan, struck back by Wang Lin's finger, was now pale, struggling fiercely. The more he struggled, the more the ancient slave symbol on his forehead flickered. The seventh breath. Zhou Jin, his face ashen, silently moved to Wang Lin's right side. Following his instructions, he unleashed all his incense power into the chair, helping to seal it. At the same time, like Lingdong, his right hand pressed against Wang Lin's body, sharing the immense rebound force. The roar of his heart echoed as Zhou Jin's entire body shook. He stepped back with his right foot, planting it as though it had fused with the ground, desperately holding on. With his eyes closed, Wang Lin continued to seal himself, preventing the borrowed momentum from dissipating. But his left eye ached as the 9 demon stars within it shattered. No longer can Lingdong's lips bled, her body trembling as she struggled to endure. Zhou Jin, too, gritted his teeth, blood spilling from his mouth, but he and Lingdong fought together to withstand the boundless force from the chair. The ninth breath. Wang Lin's body trembled uncontrollably, sweat pouring from his forehead. Despite the help from the two powerful cultivators, the chair's rebound force grew ever stronger, seemingly intent on shattering his body. The ancient demon aura and ancient god's power inside him swirled like a violent tide, wanting to burst out of his body and return to the chair. If they were allowed to return, Wang Lin's inheritance would follow its normal path, entering the second and third layers, heading toward the heavenly mansion where the heart resided, and facing unimaginable danger before possibly obtaining it. The 10th breath. Wang Lin spat out blood. The longer he held on, the more he absorbed, and the greater the benefit to him. The seventh star mark of the ancient god on his forehead spun rapidly, becoming clearer and clearer. It was almost complete, but at this very moment, disaster struck. At last, guided by a powerful sense, this god has found the place. It's here. The very place that damned 2C dreamed of returning to. A wild peal of laughter thundered from the far end of the palace where the stone platform lay. There, the void twisted violently, and through that distortion, Toasan's figure emerged, madly trying to tear through the warped space and break into this realm. As he charged forward, the twisting void stretched like a net pulled taut, bulging outward. Thunderous booms echoed, shaking the skies. Toasan was smashing it with punch after punch. His eyes blazed like lightning, locking onto the illusory net. As his strikes landed, time itself seemed to strain, seconds dragging on like eternities. 11 breaths. 12. 13. To the onlooker, these 3 breaths passed in a blink. But to Wang Lin, each one was an age, each breath as long and desolate as 3 centuries. From the seat beneath him, the repulsive force roared like a storm, growing stronger with every breath, threatening to tear Wang Lin's body apart. Blood spilled once more from the corner of his mouth. Veins bulged violently on his face, pulsing with each pounding heartbeat. A low, guttural growl escaped his throat. His primordial energy was pushed to the brink, and even with an ancient god physique, his meridians screamed with unbearable pain. Any further, and his meridians would burst. Blood vessels, bones, organs, everything inside him would shatter into pulp. Amidst the agony, only one thought filled Wang Lin's mind. He must not let this borrowed aura fade. Never. No matter what, he had to see this through. If he gave up now, if the repulsive force expelled him from the seat, he would lose this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. That was something Wang Lin would never accept. The 6 ancient god star marks on his forehead spun wildly. The 7th was slowly taking form, growing clearer, a piercing light flashing from its center, becoming ever more dazzling. In his right eye, a vortex of demonic aura whirled. Within it, a faint demon star flickered. And at the exact moment the 13th breath passed, the demon star appeared, blurred, yet real. It was the first demon star, born from nothing, proof that Wang Lin had resisted the chair's crushing pressure and preserved his internal energy. But the cost of these 13 breaths was devastating. Explosions rocked his insides. From the waist down, his flesh could no longer withstand the pressure. It ruptured in a thunderous burst. Blood soaked the seat, exposing the glinting white of bone beneath mangled flesh. The pain was unimaginable, enough to break the mind. Even imagining it would send shivers down the soul. This pain is nothing, Wang Lin sneered through clenched teeth, a cold grin curling his lips. Compared to that life-depleting calamity back then, this is barely a scratch. At that moment, within the illusory great net suspended in the palace air, Toasan's roars grew clearer. His howls thundered like war drums. He was like a sharp blade piercing through the net, drawing closer and closer to Wang Lin and the stone platform. Seated there, Wang Lin could clearly see Toasan's twisted, furious face within the net. The 8 star marks on Toasan's brow spun violently, then, without warning, it vanished, only to be replaced by a sudden suction power that flared and disappeared instantly. The pushing force beneath him dissipated, but Wang Lin didn't relax. His pupils shrank. It was the calm before the storm. What followed would be cataclysmic. Ling Dong, Zhou Jin, resist with everything you have, Wang Lin shouted without hesitation. The seat's suction was not aimed at Wang Lin alone. More than that, it targeted the strange connection formed with the pulsing heart deep within the 3rd layer. And now, from that heart burst forth a powerful energy, ripping through the void and slamming into the seat. In the instant that energy arrived, the suction power dispersed, replaced by an explosion of rebound force, 100-fold more intense. Though it lasted only a moment, the eruption was enough to annihilate Wang Lin's lower body, flesh, bones, and all. Booming roars echoed through the palace as Wang Lin's legs were obliterated, reduced to a splatter of blood and shredded flesh. And in that same moment, he was further pushed back by a tremendous force, stumbling several steps. His head jerked up, spitting out a mouthful of fresh blood, and he fell backward. Yet despite retreating, he still strictly obeyed Wang Lin's earlier command. With both hands forming seals, a massive black statue materialized around him. This black statue represented his Lingdong clan's demon god, its arms wrapped around before releasing with a thunderous roar as it pressed down on Wang Lin with immense force. Zhou Jin of the Fengtian Wolf clan also turned pale in an instant. A series of cracking sounds came from his right arm, and within moments, the bones shattered into powder, with blood and flesh scattering as his arm broke apart. He staggered back a few steps, blood spraying from his mouth as he growled. Suddenly, behind him, a crimson blood wolf materialized. The blood wolf howled and charged ahead, leaping over Zhou Jin, taking on the force meant for him from Wang Lin's body. Both Lingdong and Zhou Jin shared the brunt of the explosion that came from the chair, which had multiplied its power by 100, leaving only 3/10 of that force to strike Wang Lin. If it weren't for these two, it would have been nearly impossible for Wang Lin to hold on for even 16 breaths. Although the chair's explosion released a hundredfold power, it also carried an inheritance aura 100 times stronger. When it collided with Wang Lin, some of this aura surged into his body. As this aura struck him, Wang Lin's body rumbled. The seventh star, which had been faintly forming in the center of his brow, suddenly exploded with an intense brilliance, its light flashing 1,000-fold. At an incredible speed, it began to solidify and grow more pronounced. In 3 breaths, the seventh star would fully emerge. The seven-star ancient god was about to be born. Toasan's roar became clearer, and the vast, illusory net, which had been rising high into the air, was now being stretched to its limits, rapidly closing in on Wang Lin, now less than 1,000 feet away. Toasan's body continued to swell as he moved forward, reaching thousands of feet in height. His fists, like meteors, collided with the net, and after a series of explosive crashes, the illusory net finally gave way, cracking into countless fine fissures. Open, open, open! Toasan seemed oblivious to Wang Lin's presence. His fists became faster, and his expression twisted with a savage grin, his voice brimming with excitement. Damn Tao Ancient! This inheritance should belong to me. No one else in the stars is worthy of it, but me. Yet you keep creating these hindrances. You fool! Wang Lin's eyes turned bloodshot. His lower body had already collapsed, with only his waist up remaining upright in the seat. But the pain meant nothing to him. He didn't care at all. As long as he could retain this aura within, as long as he could become the seven-star ancient god, everything would be restored in an instant. The restoration power of the seven-star ancient god far exceeded that of the six-star. 17 breaths. The hundredfold rebound force suddenly surged again. Though it only increased by several times, it was based on a hundredfold power. As such, the intensity of this rebound force was so great that even Toasan, the demon god statue, trembled violently under the overwhelming power and collapsed into countless shards, which were flung out along with a spray of blood, landing on the stone platform of the palace floor, as did Lingdong. Zhou Jin's blood wolf howled in agony, its body swept away by the force of the wind, vanishing into smoke. Zhou Jin's body, battered and broken, was sent flying hundreds of feet away before crashing to the ground. Both of them had shared the immense rebound force, leaving them unable to assist further for the moment. Now, everything depended on Wang Lin. 17 breaths. Though it seemed slow when counted, in reality, it passed quickly. The instant Lingdong and Zhou Jin were sent flying back, the terrifying 17th breath arrived. At that moment, Toasan's roar shook the heavens and earth, as the illusory net could no longer withstand the pressure and began to collapse. Toasan's body was on the verge of breaking free, now less than 500 feet from Wang Lin. With the 17th breath, the rebound force had multiplied by several hundred times, and again, the force surged exponentially. Wang Lin, in his current state, was utterly unable to resist. The seventh star at his brow spun rapidly, having already taken shape, almost fully formed. With just 2 more breaths, it would fully emerge. In that instant, Wang Lin's right hand shot up, grasping the air. With a booming sound, a petrified ancient god body hundreds of feet tall flew toward him from the distance, and Wang Lin's hand pulled it towards him. He hurled it directly at Toasan, who was about to break free from the net. With an earth-shattering crash, the rebound force from the chair surged even higher, but Wang Lin's virtual grip on the ancient god's petrified body slammed it into the illusory net, crashing into Toasan's body as he leaned forward, his excitement almost palpable as he was ready to break free. At the same time, in the instant Wang Lin swung and hurled the object, a thunderous rumble erupted within his body. The immense rebound force surging through him, powerful enough to tear him apart, was funneled entirely into his right arm. That arm channeled it into the petrified corpse of the ancient god, which smashed toward Toasan with terrifying speed. The rebound force was overwhelming. Wang Lin's right arm couldn't withstand it, shattering completely the moment he swung the corpse. Yet that ancient god's body, like a staff piercing the heavens, vented the force with frenzied intensity into Toasan's head. A shrill, tormented scream escaped Toasan's lips as a deafening explosion echoed from his body. Blood spewed out as he was violently hurled backward. Wang Lin. It all happened too fast. Toasan had no time to evade. He could only raise his right hand, hoping to block it with the strength of his formidable 8-star ancient god physique. But he never imagined the force traveling through that corpse would be so monstrous. That immense power rampaged into his body. With a resounding crack, his right arm's bones snapped under the impact. He was blasted backward, coughing blood, and in that moment of retreat, he caught sight of Wang Lin atop the stone seat. Beyond the torn illusory net he himself had ripped open. With Toasan's unexpected help, Wang Lin had sacrificed his right arm to gain precious seconds. At the 17th breath, the 7th star mark at the center of his forehead began to turn. Amid its spinning, a fully formed image was emerging. He was nearing the final point of breakthrough. The terrifying 18th breath descended. At that moment, Toasan, blood spraying from being struck by the ancient god corpse, clearly saw the 7th star at Wang Lin's brow, seemingly breaking through its cocoon. No one understood Wang Lin's ancient god physique better than Toasan in that instant. He grasped the truth completely. He knew, without a doubt, that Wang Lin was undergoing an inheritance, the very one Toasan believed was rightfully his. You stole my memory inheritance, and now you're taking the Dao Gu inheritance too. Toasan's eyes turned crimson. He went berserk. As the 18th breath fell, he ignored his injuries and charged forward with a roar. He moved with such speed that, in a blink, he was already at the opening in the illusory. He pressed his left index finger to his forehead, and as he raised it, 20 ancient breath leaves burst forth. With a final wave of his hand, the leaves transformed into streaks of black light, shooting forward. The motion complete, Wang Lin's last remaining arm disintegrated into a spray of blood and flesh. Seal. Ling Dong, Zhou Jin, stop him. The 20 ancient breath leaves moved with incredible speed. Just as Toasan was about to break through the shattered illusory net, the leaves slammed into it, colliding directly with him. But Toasan's strength was unmatched. Not even the sealing formation could restrain him. As the ancient breath leaves struck, he threw a punch with his right hand. A thunderous boom shook the heavens. 3 of the 20 leaves shattered into dust. Toasan's hand emerged from the remnants and clawed violently to one side, ready to tear the way open. Ling Dong, gritting his teeth, ignored his injuries and leapt into action. With rapid hand seals, he thrust both palms forward. Instantly, a vast purple sea of devotional power roared into existence. Waves surging forward, formed by countless worship souls. The warrior from the Fengtian wolf clan also leapt up, swinging his arms as he growled. Wolves worshipping the moon. As his words rang out, illusory wolves began to materialize around Zhou Jin, tens of thousands in the blink of an eye, blanketing the sky and earth. Above the palace, a blood-red moon suddenly emerged. The spectral wolves howled mournfully toward the heavens, then leapt upward one by one, transforming into trails of wolf smoke that fused into the crimson moon. Wolf smoke surged toward the blood moon. After absorbing the essence of thousands upon thousands of spectral wolves, the moon plunged downward, aiming directly for Toasan's extended fist. Two powerful experts at the early Void Nirvana stage unleashed their strongest divine arts together, forming a force of annihilation that crashed toward Toasan. The impact shook the world. Ling Dong's purple sea of worship struck Toasan's fist just as the blood moon descended with a boom. Toasan was forced to withdraw his right hand. But the very instant he pulled back, his head shot through the gap in the seal. He released a roar that shook the entire palace. Ancient God roar. The sound was thunderous, exploding like rolling storms through the hall, deafening all who heard it. Zhou Jin of the Fengtian Wolf clan let out a roar, and in that instant, his blood moon twisted violently. From within, shrill and agonizing screams echoed out. It was the wolf smoke infused within it collapsing layer by layer. In a mere breath, even the blood moon itself shattered and disintegrated completely. Zhou Jin's face went pale, his chest caved inward, and as blood sprayed from his mouth, his body was hurled backward with a deafening crash, slamming into the ground. The storm born from the ancient gods' roar swept through the palace. One cultivator after another had their physical bodies destroyed on the spot. 8 of them were reduced to flying ash. Even the 8 giant dragons disintegrated alongside them. Only the corpses of the 3 ancient clans remained partially intact. Half of them endured the roar without collapse. Toasan went mad. As he had shouted before, Wang Lin had stolen his memory inheritance, and now he was going to seize the Dao Gu inheritance as well. How could Toasan not go insane? Even at the cost of grievous injury, he was determined to reclaim what he believed rightfully his. With Ling Dong and Zhou Jin unable to stop him, Toasan thrust both arms into the gap in the ancient breath leaf and violently tore it apart, attempting to force his way in. Though described in detail, everything happened in the blink of an eye. Wang Lin's body, frozen in the seat, continued to shatter under the massively amplified rebound force that surged in the 18th breath. His chest and left arm dissolved in an instant. Only his head remained, hovering above the seat, tethered by sheer will to it from a distance. But the collapse was far from over. Time itself seemed to slow at the 18th breath, stretching endlessly. Cracks appeared along Wang Lin's jaw, and then his entire head began to fracture and explode into fragments. His lips, nose, at the instant it emerged, all 7 star marks at Wang Lin's brow ceased their rapid spin, slowing into a single rotation, 7 stars forming a vortex. A force far mightier than when Wang Lin had only 6 stars exploded outward, rushing down from the star marks. From the center of his brow, his eyes, nose, and lips swiftly reappeared. His fully formed head seemed to be reborn in that instant. The 7 star marks began spinning for a second revolution. Wang Lin's neck, chest, abdomen, and arms, the entire upper half of his body, condensed out of thin air. Bones formed first, followed by flesh and organs. Every strand of muscle was infused with vast ancient god power. Every inch of bone radiated immense ancient god aura. As the star mark spun a third time on his brow, Wang Lin's lower half suddenly took shape. His reconstructed ancient god physique was no longer several hundred feet tall. It had become 1,000 feet. 1,000-foot ancient god. A 7-star ancient god. 1,000-foot royal 7-star ancient god. Wang Lin's eyes snapped open. He was still seated in that chair. He hadn't moved at all. The 7-star marks on his brow, which had slowed, now spun furiously. The ancient god power surged throughout his body. At that moment, Wang Lin felt as though he could destroy an entire cultivation star with a single punch. Even more, visions of the Black Tortoise's ultimate strike, taught to him by the second-generation vermilion bird on the Emperor's star, flashed through his mind. Insights into the essence of strength flooded his soul. But that wasn't all. Within the chair, bursts of inherited divine arts emerged. These arts, like broken fragments of divine sense, rushed into Wang Lin's mind, imprinting themselves as part of his own deep memory. At the same time, perhaps because Wang Lin had remained seated for a full 18 breaths, a strange connection formed between his divine sense and the chair. This link was bizarre and difficult to comprehend. Even Wang Lin couldn't grasp how it had formed, and now wasn't the time to ponder it. Because of that link, the chair transformed, turning into a burial platform. As Wang Lin sat upon it, A complete vision of all three layers of the ancient tomb emerged in his mind. His divine sense, amplified millions of times by the chair in a way he couldn't explain, sensed a will within the tomb itself. This was the will of the ancient tomb, a lingering fragment of Dao Gu Yema's consciousness. As Wang Lin's divine sense continued to expand and merge with this will, it erupted outward from the palace in an overwhelming surge. The first to be engulfed by it was Toasan, Senator his roar. In the ninth map, the woman in the pink dress, whose eyebrows carried an alluring charm, wore a gloomy expression as she strode forward. She was controlling the forbidden formation of Toasan, but for some unknown reason, it had begun to loosen, which made her extremely uneasy. Who would have thought that a mere ancient god could enter first? But with Toasan, I'm not without chances. But why is this formation loosening? She furrowed her brows, deep in thought as she continued walking. Suddenly, her body froze. Before her, in the ninth map, swirling spatial turbulence seemed to dissipate as if swept by a fierce wind. She immediately raised her head, her expression changing. She clearly sensed a divine sense that caused her to tremble, sweeping past her in a moment. This divine sense was so powerful that her mind buzzed, and she stood there for a while before recovering, her eyes showing shock. Whose divine sense is this? Could it be that Dao Gu Yema wasn't killed by the immortal venerable? The Toasan star mark was in disarray, no longer 9 stars but 8, and it had already been modified. Apologies for the mistake. At the same time, within the ninth map, the 9 heavens demon venerable's avatar's gaze flickered as the burial platform beneath him sped forward. His true body had already entered the ancient tomb, and despite Wang Lin getting ahead, he was not worried at all. Take it. Even if you take everything, you won't leave this ancient tomb alive. A cold light flashed in the 9 heavens demon venerable's eyes, but just then, something in the void ahead suddenly stirred, and countless turbulent flows. In that instant, his scalp tingled, and he felt a sense of soul dissolution, a feeling he hadn't experienced since he was not yet a third-step powerhouse. Who is this? Whose divine sense was that? The 9 heavens demon venerable's face turned pale, staring blankly into the void, fear for the first time appearing in his heart. Not only the 9 heavens demon venerable and the woman in pink, but all the surviving cultivators within the ancient tomb felt the overwhelming divine sense sweep across them in this instant. Their hearts trembled with fear. This divine sense carried an overwhelming aura, like a king gazing down at the land from the sky. Within the 7th map, an old man in a hemp robe had his lips pierced by 3 needles, his aging face radiating a cruel, fierce aura. The great barren sage, whose true body had entered the ancient tomb, was striding forward. His profound void cultivation radiated, creating an earth-shattering power that no one could resist. He walked casually, crossing one map with every 5 steps, heading straight ahead. But at that moment, his steps suddenly halted, and his eyes flashed with sharp light. The divine sense that fused with Wang Lin's will swept over the great barren sage, causing a tremendous roar. The great barren sage raised his hands in a spell-casting gesture, violently attempting to grasp the divine sense that alarmed him. However, just as his right hand touched the divine sense, a rebound force erupted, colliding with the great barren sage. With a resounding boom, the great barren sage staggered backward, his face changing drastically as his mind quivered. "Who are you?" he shouted. No one answered. The divine sense continued to spread, extending from the 7th map to the 6th and 5th maps. On the 4th map, the true 9 heavens demon venerable and mystic tone elder walked side by side, their expressions calm, traversing endless distances in their stride. But suddenly, the true 9 heavens demon venerable's expression changed. "My avatar has detected." Before he could finish, his words were cut off as the divine sense his avatar had sensed roared toward them, extending from the avatar's position. The mystic tone elder's pupils contracted. Under this divine sense, his mind was shaken, an unexpected surprise in his heart as he looked at the 9 heavens demon venerable beside him. The 9 heavens demon venerable's expression darkened, his eyes filled with shock. "It's strong, very strong." Among the 8 consorts, the woman in white ranked third. At this moment, She had stopped advancing in the ancient tomb and was speeding backward, crossing one map after another, eventually reaching the first map. She had given up on obtaining the treasure here and chose to leave. In the depths of her being, she felt an ominous sense, as if she didn't leave now, she would be trapped here forever. As she sped along, a divine sense suddenly swept past her. The moment it did, she froze. Her expression shifted, her forehead sweating as her body came to an abrupt halt. She dared not move an inch. His mind thudded loudly, as though his very consciousness was compressed around him, making him feel as though his body, inside and out, were fully visible to others. Along with the fear, a sense of embarrassment rose, only to be swiftly suppressed by her. After a long while, the divine sense slowly receded from her, stretching forward into the distance. Only when the divine sense departed did the woman in white let out a breath of relief, her delicate features tinged with a faint blush. After a moment of silence, she cast a complex glance toward the direction the divine sense had vanished. Wang Lin sat on the throne inside the palace. His divine sense spread uncontrollably, revealing all the ancient star realm cultivators within this ancient tomb. He saw the woman in pink whose eyes always carried a playful charm, as well as the clone of the Nine Heavens demon Venerable. As his divine sense continued to spread, he saw the great Baron Sage stepping into the tomb's crack, along with the true Nine Heavens and the mystic tone Tao Venerable. Finally, he saw the woman in white. As his divine sense extended again, he instantly saw the crack in the ancient tomb that led to the ancient star realm. Wang Lin, instead, it silently floated outside the crack. But just as Wang Lin's divine sense approached the crack within the tomb, the figure in black suddenly looked up. Two bright, sharp beams shot from the eyes hidden beneath the black robe. His gaze seemed to penetrate the crack and directly meet Wang Lin's divine sense. Silence. The two stared at each other silently across the crack. "Who are you?" They spoke almost simultaneously. The difference lay in the voice of the figure in black. It carried an ancient, hoarse sound, as though it were the scraping of ages. Wang Lin's words, however, came through the waves of divine sense, sent via the will of the tomb itself. They carried an aura of age, as though they had been spoken by someone who had lived for countless eons. "I am the Palm Sovereign of the ancient star realm." The figure in black spoke slowly. Within the crack, Wang Lin remained silent, his will not transmitting for a long time. "Whoever you are, please release them. I will reward you generously afterward." The figure in black spoke with a frown, his tone calm. "Moon fishing in the well. A fine divine art." After a while, Wang Lin's voice echoed out through the will, reaching the mind of the black-robed figure. The moment it entered, the figure's body suddenly trembled. Without hesitation, he raised his right hand and struck. The massive palm print that had been floating in the air came crashing down, hurtling toward the crack. But it was too late. At that moment, Wang Lin, fused with the tomb's will, had become one with it. The crack, which was supposed to close, had been kept open by external forces. Now, with a mere thought, Wang Lin caused a violent rumble to echo as the power that had once solidified the crack could no longer hold the tomb. Even the lingering divine thought of Dao Guyema was immediately crushed under the pressure, causing the crack to rapidly shrink. Once it closed, Wang Lin could imprint a seal, ensuring that the tomb would remain sealed for tens of thousands of years without reopening. All who entered would find no way out. The power of the ancient star realm would be reduced by 30%. The figure in black let out a low growl and took a step forward. As he neared the rapidly closing crack, he raised his right hand. As his dry palm lifted, it merged with the descending palm print. The enormous palm print instantly fused into his right palm. With a powerful swing, he struck directly toward the crack. At the same time, a scorching aura emanated from the black-robed figure's right hand. This heat was not from fire, but from light. It was the primordial force. The blinding light struck the crack and penetrated through, heading straight for Wang Lin's divine sense. The strength of this palm, as it pierced the crack and entered the tomb, shook the entire ancient tomb, causing it to tremble violently. When it reached the will and divine sense Wang Lin had merged with, it became a storm that instantly swept over him, sending his divine sense reeling backward. The power of this palm was enough to obliterate worlds. Its strength was the limit of this starry sky. However, the tomb's will, the residual divine thought of Dao Guyemo, could not be so easily destroyed. The moment the palm penetrated the crack and entered, a mighty roar came from the third layer of the tomb, rumbling through the space. This roar could not be heard by anyone outside. Only Wang Lin, whose divine sense had merged with the tomb's will, could hear it clearly. The roar entered the tomb's will and reached Wang Lin's divine sense, causing his physical body within the palace to erupt with golden light from his eyes. As the golden light surged, the roar that had entered through his divine sense felt like it was thundering within his body. It transformed into an odd wave that spread into his throat. As he opened his mouth, the roar erupted with an immense force. Roar! The roar of power. The heavens and earth changed color, shaking the very foundations of time. A storm veiled the sky, and Toasan spat blood under the impact of the roar. His body twisted, his arms pulling together to shield himself. In an instant, more than half of his body was torn apart, exposing his stark white bones. This collapse was the result of the ancient god body of the Eight Stars royal clan being destroyed. It seemed she used some divine art, barely managing to survive after several near collapses. The great Baron Sage, True Nine Heavens, and Mystic Tone Elder, the three of them spat blood simultaneously under the roar, their bodies crumbling in an instant. Even with their profound void cultivation, they had no power to resist the force of the sound. But as void profound experts, they had their own life-preserving divine arts. Their essence spirits survived the roar, and they quickly summoned the backup bodies they had prepared through their cultivation. Horror flashed in their eyes as they dared not advance any further. Without hesitation, they retreated, intent on leaving the ancient tomb. The roar continued to reverberate, heading straight for the crowd.